Haven Sanatorium. Haven Sanatorium is a former tuberculosis sanatorium in the foothills of the Turtle Mountains, a few minutes north of Dunseth. Thousands of TB patients received treatment here between 1909 and the end of the TB epidemic in the 1940s. Prior to the advent of antibiotics, which brought tuberculosis under control, roughly 50% of TB patients died from this disease. A common remedy at the time was to surgically collapse a lung. One can scarcely imagine the suffering that took place here. Years later, Haven would become a home for the developmentally disabled and the subject of some controversy, alleged understaffing, mistreatment, and neglect. There is still a very vocal group of former employees and regional residents who empathetically deny any mistreatment or neglect ever occurred. Haven came under fire like hundreds of other sanatoriums around the country, and eventually closed its doors in 1987. There is a spookiness from the extended period of abandonment and the natural reclamation of the site. Trees and weeds have gone wild. The formerly beautiful and placid water features have long run dry. On top of the many, many deaths that occurred from TB within the building, years after it closed, a teenager was killed when he fell down an open elevator shaft in the dark. Many who have gone there claim to have experienced everything from a cold breeze passing by them to bone-chilling screams heard throughout the building. And almost everyone who has visited has experienced something. The Miniwashi. A legend surrounds the Little Missouri River, a 560-mile-long tributary of the Missouri River. The legend of the river monster, the Miniwashi. Although sightings of the beast are slim, in 1921, curator for the North Dakota State Historical Society, Melvin Randolph Gilmore, told of one of the sightings. In the late 1800s, a man wandering near the river saw an enormous creature rise from the water. Red hair, thick like a buffalo, covered the beast. The monster only had one eye and a single horn thrust from its forehead. Its backbone protruded, knocked like an enormous saw. Terrified, the man made it home before he passed out and later died. When white settlers spoke of the encounter, local American Indians told them their fear of the monster. Whoever saw the beast was said to have went mad, and usually blind, before succumbing to an untimely death. Devil's Lake. A long time ago, rumors had circulated among the Native Americans about a huge sea monster that had wiped out an entire army of Native Americans. After his appearance, the water in Devil's Lake had become so polluted that all the fish disappeared. The Native Americans became so uneasy about the whole matter that Little Shell, chief of the tribe, sent the medicine man and inventor to investigate. Ka'aske found a band of Native Americans living at the lake. The old Sioux medicine man related the strange story of how there had been an appearance to them. It seems that they had just completed a bloody battle, and victorious, had driven the rival Native Americans to the Canadian border. They had planned another attack to drive them beyond the border when there appeared to them a great spirit man, Awanda the Seer, with a warning that if they did, a huge monster would come out of the lake and swallow them up. They did not heed this warning, and the chief of the warriors ordered the strongest men to dress in full war regalia. Drums began beating. The Native Americans began howling. Bows, arrows, and hatchets flew. Native American women also danced in a circle. Even young boys were dressed in full war clothing, dancing. But just as they were ready to go on the warpath, they saw the water rise and boil. The earth seemed to tremble from under their feet. A large, ugly monster came out of the water. His saucer-like eyes flashed like a copper fire. They were terrified. Never in their lives had they seen such an animal. He had short legs, a short chubby neck, and a long head. He made his way towards them, and they fought for their lives, but the demon was too powerful. One by one, he swallowed everyone in sight. However, a few had gotten away to another Native American camp. The medicine man, who had left upon the warning of the spirit man, returned a few days later with another band of Native Americans. That was the beginning of mysteries. The lake became salty, like the sea. The medicine man was baffled. The fish disappeared as if by magic. Not even a dead fish could be found. Fish had been plentiful before. In fact, the Native Americans had taken them out in the springtime with a pitchfork and hauled them away in wagon loads. The old medicine man sent for another tribe medicine man to help investigate. That was the reason Chief Little Shell had sent Kaaske. They prepared a seance, known as Brains of Know-It-All. All night, the Native Americans feasted, danced, sang, and prayed. At last, Machagabe said he had the answer. He ordered the largest boat, and with the medicine men set off to the lake. They came to an area of water which had suddenly turned to a stormy sea. A few yards off, they saw large bubbles on the surface. The medicine men became panic-stricken. Machagobe is crazy, they said, to bring us face to face with this sea monster. We have no chance of overpowering it. They wanted to cast him overboard. However, Machagabe convinced them that they need not fear. But the whirlpool pinched one of the medicine men overboard. When he hit the water, he began spinning around, going deeper and deeper. Then he disappeared, vanished to the grave of the sea monster. So his companions thought. This was enough. The medicine men started sharpening their knives. It was time to kill Machagabe. Do you know, Machagabe said, that he who fell into the water is the spirit man of the water? The Great Spirit will not suffer us loss of our brother. This problem is not a matter of one man, but of concern to all the Native Americans' welfare, and it is our mission to solve their problem. The medicine men for once agreed. They rowed along the boiling hole until the spirit man who had fallen into the water appeared again. He described what he had discovered. Deep in the water, he had found a hole where the water came out boiling. This was the mouth of a subterranean passage connecting with an underground river that ran across the country to the Gulf of Mexico. They decided the monster came to Devil's Lake from the sea through this underground river. And as he made his way into Devil's Lake, the salt drew all the fish into its underground river, and they were never able to get back in the lake. Bloody Knife. Bloody Knife was an American Indian who served as a scout and guide for the U.S. 7th Cavalry. He was the favorite scout of Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer, and has been called perhaps the most famous Native American scout to ever serve the U.S. Army. Bloody Knife was born around 1840. In 1876, during the Little Bighorn Campaign, Bloody Knife repeatedly tried to warn Custer that there were too many Indians to fight. In spite of the overwhelming odds, he refused to stay out of the battle. During the battle, Custer directed Bloody Knife and the other Arikara and Crow scouts to drive off the herds of Indian ponies in the Sioux camp. Reno and his men retreated into the woodland near the river, and Bloody Knife was shot in the head and killed while mounted on his horse. Legend has it that after Bloody Knife was killed fighting for his people, his buckskin horse found its way back to Leica Fishhook Village near Garrison, a trip of over 500 miles, and according to the lore, the ghosts of all those who had died in battle, along with Bloody Knife, were embodied in this horse, which returned home to tell the tale of their courageous battle. White Lady Lane. Once, long ago and not so far away, lived a lovely young maiden named Anna Story. She and her mother and the rest of their family lived in a little shack by the railroad tracks, close to Leyden. About the same time, there lived a Syrian peddler by the name of Sam Khalil, who rode around the countryside, selling from his wagon load of pots, pans, and other household items. He wanted to marry the beautiful Anna, but her mother would have none of it. But she did have an eye for a good deal, so she told the peddler to come back when Anna was 16, and he can have her hand in marriage if, in the meantime, she could help herself to his wares. He agreed to this condition and returned in a year's time to fulfill the bargain and have Anna as his wife. When he came for the girl, the mother refused and offered him the door. In his anger at being unable to have the hand of young Anna, he pushed his way past the mother and shot Anna dead in her night clothes. The mother tried to intercept, but Khalil shot her in the face, the bullet breaking her jaw. Other members of Anna's family jumped out a window and ran to a neighbor's house for help. Meanwhile, the peddler, after having shot Anna and her mother, pulled his pistol on himself in an attempt to take his own life. As it was not a quality firearm, and in fact was probably something he sold from his wagon, it failed to fire, and the disgusted man threw it to the ground. Still bent on doing away with himself, he drew his rusty old pocket knife from his overall pocket and tried to slit his own throat. That being harder to do so than he initially thought, along with the fact that his knife was not very sharp, he failed in his second attempt at the dastardly deed. About this time, the authorities had come to the scene and the peddler gave himself up without a fight. Mr. Khalil was sentenced to life in the state penitentiary in Bismarck, but was released about 10 years later at the age of 71 to relatives in Minnesota. The mother lived on to tell the tale, although she had a dent in her lower jaw for all her days. Ghouls, are you getting excited for Christmas? Do you guys get a long, Christmas vacation if you're in college or, school? Because I, unfortunately, only get Christmas off. But I hope you ghouls are gonna have, a lot of plans. Are you? Let me know your plans in the comments. I am curious, because I really have none. But I do hope you ghouls enjoyed these North Dakota urban legends. They were a little hard to find. There was one, it wasn't really an urban legend. It was that one where that girl gets like frozen and they think she's dead, but then she like thaws out and she's alive. Like, it's not an urban legend. It actually happened. So I couldn't really talk about it, but I wanted to. Any of you ghouls from North Dakota? Did I do a good job? Did I miss any? Is there any that are like region specific? Let me know. But as always, ghouls, the last video will be on the top left. The next video will be on the bottom left. All my social medias are on the screen, as well as in the description box below. And remember, there's always someone or something watching you.